My name is Captain Connie Quinlan, and I had the pleasure of having laser eye surgery with Dr. Gulani. I've lived with glasses and or contacts since I was 8 years old, and up until the time I met Dr. Gulani, I was severely nearsighted with an astigmatism. My eyesight was slightly worse than 2400. At the time, I was alright living with contacts, but preparing for my second deployment to Iraq, being an officer in the Army, it became very important to me, and I started doing research for laser eye surgery. I did extensive research trying to find the right surgeon. I was willing to travel anywhere. I searched Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, anywhere I could find. I went to the FDA to find FDA-approved lasers, what equipment was the best, what questions I should ask for in a surgeon, what I should look for. I researched U.S. News & World Report, did a very extensive report on laser eye surgery and laser eye surgeons. So I put quite a bit of effort into finding the right surgeon. A lot of people I spoke to talked about local surgeons and local LASIK doctors who would give military discounts or who weren't very expensive, and I never quite understood that because these are my eyes, I'm willing to invest in them. And I was very paranoid about being so severely nearsighted, having the astigmatism. I had heard a lot of rumors that maybe LASIK wasn't right for me because my prescription was too strong, that I might be more likely to live with a lot of side effects, to live with halos and decreased night vision. And that was difficult for me because wearing contacts, I more or less had perfect vision, and I didn't know if I was willing to trade that for, seriously corrected natural vision, but with all of those side effects. When I discovered Dr. Gulani's website, I was actually at a training exercise at the National Training Center with my unit. I knew that I had a few months before I had to deploy to Iraq, and I decided to send him an email and just do a little investigation. The first thing that struck me about the Gulani Vision Institute was the speed with which they got back to me and their customer service. I was in the middle of the California desert, and within 24 hours I had a voicemail on my cell phone asking me if I could come in the next day. So I was very impressed with that, and within the next week I was at the Gulani Vision Institute. I met with Dr. Gulani. Dr. Gulani inspired a lot of confidence in me as a patient, investigating his background, doing searches about local articles that have been written about him, worldwide articles that have been written about him, and seeing that he operates on other laser eye surgeons and can correct any side effects that happen. That really put me at ease, and knowing that in the first place that was going to be unlikely for me to have any complications, but if God forbid there were, that he could fix them, that made me feel much better. He informed me that I was not necessarily a candidate for LASIK per se because of my status in the military and because of the nature of my vision. Instead, I had advanced surface ablation with Dr. Gulani. I was a little nervous going into it, but he put me at ease, and I was more or less completely functional within the next few days. He warned me that perfect vision would not be instantaneous, and sure enough, within the next few weeks, it gradually came until now, without any contacts, glasses, eye drops, dryness, anything. I now have perfect vision, and I can't begin to thank him. He has totally changed my life. So much so that I've recommended him to other soldiers in my unit. I've recommended him to my family, and my father is actually now a patient of Dr. Gulani's, and I'm trying to work on my mother as well. A lot of people I know shopped around for laser eye surgeons based on costs. I've never really understood that, and I think Dr. Gulani, like most good surgeons, they want to help you and they're willing to work with you, and Dr. Gulani was no different. There were financing options available, and he didn't need to have flashy discounts and sales advertised all over the place. I knew that going there he would work with me and he would help me, and I have not been in the least bit disappointed. As an officer in the Army, I had already spent 1 year in Iraq. It's against Army regulations to wear contacts in a combat environment. Even if you try to get away with it, there are constant problems with sanitation, dust, dirt. It's just not recommended, so I spent that year wearing my glasses. I don't like wearing my glasses, and especially just being in a hostile environment, there's that constant fear that if you get in an accident, if you come under attack, if something happens, what if my glasses are knocked off? What if they break? Then I'm essentially blind. Just being in that environment, always cleaning them off, always getting dirty, it's just not something I wanted to deal with again. You're in an atmosphere where you have enough things to worry about, your vision shouldn't be one of them. So when I found out that I had a few months to spare before I had to deploy for my second tour in Iraq, that's when I started investigating laser eye surgery and found Dr. Gulani. Once I discovered the Gulani Vision Institute, it became readily apparent that Dr. Gulani is a world-renowned surgeon. I did a little investigation and found a lot of neutral third-party articles about him and his work. And one of the things that concerned me is that I knew I didn't have a lot of time before I needed to leave for Iraq, so I was concerned that he wouldn't be able to fit me in. I was very pleasantly surprised when I discovered that within days of contacting the Gulani Vision Institute, I was physically there doing my consultation, meeting with Dr. Gulani himself, and I actually had my surgery the next week and was able to make a complete and full recovery long before I ever had to worry about deploying. Another thing that impressed me about Dr. Gulani is the amount of time that he spends with his patients, ensuring that they understand exactly what they're getting into and exactly what is going to be done with them. He literally sits there with the model of the eye, dissecting it in front of you, explaining what he does as a surgeon, what complications could arise and how he could fix them, exactly what the surgery is going to do, and that did a lot to put me at ease. One of the other things that impressed me about Dr. Gulani is the amount of time he spends with his patients, ensuring they understand every aspect of the procedure and what is going to be done with them. He literally sat there in front of me with the model of the eye, dissecting it, explaining exactly what advanced surface ablation was, what he was going to do during my procedure, what could possibly go wrong, and how he could fix that if it did go wrong. I actually brought my mother with me to all of my appointments. She's somewhat of the medical expert of the family, and he sat there and listened as both of us asked all of our questions. We didn't feel rushed at all, like we were taking any of his time. He sat there until he was confident that we understood everything that was going to be done. And when my father later became a patient of his, the same was true then. His surgery was actually a little more complicated just because of age and cataracts, and we spent a lot of time discussing it until all of us were confident that we knew exactly what was going to be happening. And so I greatly appreciated that about Dr. Gulani. One of the things that surprised me about the Gulani Vision Institute is the accessibility of Dr. Gulani. I was surprised at the level of accessibility given that he is a surgeon of his stature. I met with him immediately during my first trip to the Gulani Vision Institute, and then immediately after my surgery I was in contact with him several times. He was always checking in with me to make sure I was doing all right. I have any access to him that I need if anything should go wrong. I was afraid that a surgeon of his stature, it would be very hard for me to fit my appointments into my schedule given the fact that I was an out-of-town patient. I am active duty military, so I don't have the most flexible schedule, and I was very impressed with his ability and the Institute's ability to work with me and be flexible, and I was able to easily fit all of my pre-op and post-op appointments into both of our schedules, so I greatly appreciated that. I have access to Dr. Gulani whenever I need it, and he always made it known that he was there as my surgeon if ever I needed to ask him any questions, get in touch with him, or if I experienced any problems. And as a patient, that was very important to me. I would recommend Dr. Gulani to anyone considering any form of vision surgery. Dr. Gulani, for everything that you have done for me and for my family.